Part 6, back in Alex's quarters, the three of them, Alex, Ryan, and Pixel, huddled around a small table cluttered with tools, wires, and the mysterious alien sphere. The room was dimly lit, the emergency lights casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, the plasma storms raged on, their deafening roars muffled slightly by the thick dome walls. Every now and then, a loud crash would echo through the habitat as another generator sputtered or part of the structure groaned under the strain. Alex placed the sphere carefully on the table, her fingers tracing its smooth surface. It felt warm, to the touch almost alive, and the faint buzzing sensation she had noticed earlier was stronger now. She glanced at Ryan, who was busy setting up a portable diagnostic scanner they had scavenged from the maintenance bay. "You think this thing can really help us?" Ryan asked, his voice low but tinged with skepticism. "I mean, it's cool and all, but we're talking about alien tech here. What if we mess it up? We don't have a choice," Alex replied, her tone firm despite the nod of uncertainty. Twisting in her stomach, "If we don't try, we're dead anyway. At least this gives us a shot." Ryan nodded reluctantly, adjusting the settings on the scanner. "All right, let's see what we're dealing with." He activated the device, running it over the sphere, while Alex watched the readings flicker across the tiny screen. First, the data made no sense, a jumble of numbers and symbols that didn't correspond to anything human-made. Then something changed. As Pixel hopped onto the table and nudged the sphere with his nose, the readings stabilized, forming patterns that were almost recognizable. "What's he doing?" Ryan muttered, staring at the cat in disbelief. "I don't know," Alex admitted, scratching behind Pixel's ears absent-mindedly. "But whatever it is, it's working." The scanner began to display information in bursts, translating the alien signals into something closer to human language. It wasn't perfect, the words were fragmented and disjointed, but enough came through for them to piece together a basic understanding. "It's some kind of energy regulator," Alex said slowly, reading the text aloud. "Designed to stabilize power systems. That's why it reacted to the generators failing back at the colony." Ryan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data. "So you're saying this thing could fix our problems? Just like that?" "Maybe," Alex replied cautiously. "But we need to be careful. If those aliens destroyed themselves messing with this kind of tech, we can't afford to make the same mistakes." Pixel chirped softly, pawing at the sphere, as if urging them to continue. Alex smiled faintly, picking him up and holding him close. Despite the chaos swirling around them, his presence brought a strange sense of calm. Whatever secrets he carried, they weren't going anywhere, not yet. Over the next several hours, Alex and Ryan worked tirelessly, experimenting with the sphere and trying to understand how it functioned. They connected it to a small backup, a generator they had brought from the command center, using it as a test subject to see if the device could stabilize the power flow. At first, nothing happened. The generator hummed weakly, its output fluctuating wildly as the storms outside interfered with its systems. Then Pixel jumped onto the generator housing, curling up near the sphere. Immediately, the device began to glow, its plates shifting and rearranging themselves in response to his proximity. The generator's hum grew steadier, the fluctuations smoothing out until the machine was running at full capacity. "Well, I'll be damned," Ryan breathed, staring in awe. "It works!" Alex grinned, relief washing over her. For the first time since they had returned from the alien ship, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. "This could save the colony," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "If we can scale it up, we might be able to stabilize the entire grid." "But how do we explain this to everyone else?" Ryan asked, his enthusiasm tempered by practical concerns. "Alien tech powered by a cat? They're not going to believe." "Us. We don't tell them everything," Alex replied firmly. "We say it's a prototype, something we've been working on secretly. As long as it works, does it matter where it came from?" Ryan hesitated, then shrugged. "Fair point. Still, Daniel's not going to like it. He doesn't have to." Alex shot back. "As long as it keeps the dome standing, he'll go along with it." With renewed determination, they began preparing the sphere for integration into the colony's main power grid. It wasn't easy. The device required precise calibration, and every adjustment had to be tested multiple times to ensure stability. Pixel stayed close throughout, his movements seemingly synchronized with the sphere's responses. Whether he was guiding them intentionally or simply reacting instinctively, Alex couldn't say. Either way, she was grateful for his help. By the time they finished, exhaustion was etched into both their faces. Their hands were raw from handling tools, and their muscles ached from hours spent crouched over the table. But the sphere was readier. As ready as it could be given the circumstances. We should test it on the main generator first, Ryan suggested, rubbing his temples. If it fails, at least we won't lose everything. Agreed, Alex said, grabbing her pack and slipping the sphere inside. Let's move before the storms knock out another section. The journey to the main generator was short but tense. The corridors of the habitat were eerily quiet, most colonists having retreated to their quarters to wait out the storm. Those who remained looked pale and drawn, their eyes hollow with fatigue. Alex and Ryan exchanged grim looks as they passed. Groups huddled together, whispering anxiously about the worsening conditions. When they reached the generator room, they found it in disarray. Sparks flew from exposed wiring, and the air smelled acrid from overheated components. A team of engineers was frantically attempting repairs, their faces streaked with sweat and soot. "What are you two doing here?" one of them demanded, looking up as Alex and Ryan entered. "We've got something that might help," Alex replied, holding up the sphere. "Let us try." The engineer frowned, clearly skeptical. "And what exactly is that?" "Prototype," Ryan interjected quickly. "Trust us, it's worth a shot." Reluctantly, the engineers stepped aside, allowing Alex and Ryan to approach the generator. Working quickly, they connected the sphere to the system, calibrating it based on the tests they had run earlier. Pixel sat nearby, watching intently. As the device began to hum softly, for a moment nothing happened. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the generator roared back to life. Lights flickered back on throughout the habitat, bathing the room in a warm glow. The engineers stared in stunned silence, their expression shifting from disbelief to cautious optimism. "It's working," one of them whispered, shaking his head in wonder. "How did you do this?" Alex forced a smile, avoiding the question. "Doesn't matter. What matters is that it's stable for now. Keep an eye on it, and let us know if anything changes." As they left the generator room, cheers erupted behind them. Word spread quickly through the colony, lifting spirits that had been crushed under the weight of despair. The first time in days, there was hope. People emerged from their quarters, laughing and embracing each other as the lights burned steadily overhead. But Alex knew better than to celebrate too soon. While the sphere had stabilized the generator, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of its potential and its dangers. Later that night, as Alex lay in bed with Pixel curled up beside her, she replayed the day's events in her mind. The sphere had saved the colony for now, but at what cost? Its connection to Pixel was still a mystery, and the warnings from the alien ship lingered in her thoughts. Something about this felt unfinished. Her cum unit buzzed softly, pulling her from her thoughts.
Wait.
It was Daniel, requesting an update. Sighing, she grabbed the device and keyed in a response. "The generator's stable," she typed, "but we need to monitor it closely. There's more to this than we understand." Daniel's reply came moments later. "Good work. Keep me posted." Alex set the cum unit aside, staring at the ceiling. She wanted to believe they had turned a corner, that the worst was behind them. But deep down, she knew better. The storms weren't done with them yet, and neither was the sphere. Beside her, Pixel purred softly, his body rising and falling with each breath. Alex reached out, stroking his fur gently. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them. Together as humans always did. Even when the odds seemed impossible, they never quit, not even for a cat. Part 5, the narrow passageway spiraled downward into darkness, its walls lined with the same crystalline material that pulsed faintly in response to Pixel's presence. Alex and Ryan moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly against the smooth surfaces. The air grew colder as they descended, carrying with it a metallic temps that made Alex's throat itch. She adjusted her grip on her scanner, keeping one hand on the wall for balance while the other clutched Pixel close to her chest. Despite the oppressive silence, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching them. Every so often she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see glowing eyes staring back at her from the shadows. But there was nothing except the faint hum of energy coursing through the ship, a constant reminder of the alien technology. Surrounding them, still no sign of what triggered that signal? Ryan asked quietly, his voice barely audible over the hum. Alex shook her head, glancing at the scanner in her hand.
Nothing yet.
Whatever it is, it's not broadcasting openly anymore. Ryan frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. It had been some kind of automated distress call? Something left behind after the crash? It's possible, Alex replied. But if that's true, why now? Why activate after all this time? Before Ryan could respond, Pixel let out a soft meow, squirming in Alex's arms until she set him down. He darted ahead, his paws making no sound against the smooth floor. As he moved, the crystals along the walls brightened, casting pools of light that illuminated their path. It was almost as if the ship itself was guiding them, responding to the cat's presence in ways neither Alex nor Ryan could fully understand. Guess we're following him again, Ryan muttered, shaking his head. This whole thing feels like something out of a bad dream. Alex didn't argue. She felt the same unease creeping up her spine, but she pushed it aside. They had come too far to turn back now, whatever answers lay at the end of this tunnel. They needed them not just for themselves, but for the colony, after what felt like an eternity. The passageway opened up into a vast chamber. Unlike the upper levels of the ship, this room was dimly lit, its only source of illumination coming from a series of floating orbs suspended in midair. Each orb emitted a soft golden glow, casting long shadows across the walls. At the center of the chamber stood a massive structurous circular platform, surrounded by intricate carvings and etchings that shimmered faintly in the low light. Pixel trotted toward the platform, without hesitation, hopping onto it and sitting down as if waiting for something. Alex and Ryan exchanged a glance before cautiously approaching. As they drew closer, Alex noticed that the carvings depicted scenes eerily similar to the holographic projection they had seen earlier. Thriving cities, advanced technology, and finally, destruction. It was a cycle, repeated over and over again, as though warning future visitors of the dangers of unchecked ambition. This doesn't feel right, Ryan said, his voice tense. We should leave now. We can't, Alex replied firmly. Not until we figure out what this place is in, what it wants from us. As if in response to her words, the platform began to hum softly, vibrating beneath their feet. Floating orbs shifted position, aligning themselves in a perfect circle around the platform. A beam of light shot upward from the center, forming another holographic image. This time it wasn't a planet or a city. It was a message. The symbols were unfamiliar, but they seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like speech. Alex stared at them, trying to decipher their meaning, when suddenly, the device she had picked up earlier, the small spherical object, slipped out of her pocket and rolled onto the platform. Before she could grab it, the sphere activated, its plates shifting rapidly as it rose into the air. What the hell's happening? Ryan exclaimed, backing away instinctively. I don't know, Alex shouted, shielding her eyes as the light intensified. When she looked again, the sphere had merged with the hologram, transforming the abstract symbols into something recognizable. Human language. Warning, the message read, the words flickering slightly as if struggling to form. Energy containment failure imminent. Evacuate immediately. Alex's heart sank. It's not talking about us, it's talking about them. The aliens who built this ship. That's why it crashed. But why show us this now? Ryan demanded. What does it want from us? Before either of them could answer, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The orbs shattered one by one, plunging the chamber into near darkness. The platform continued to hum, growing louder and more unstable with each passing second. Pixel let out a sharp yowl, leaping off the platform and darting toward the exit. Come on, Alex yelled, grabbing Ryan's arm and pulling him after the cat. They sprinted through the passageway, the walls shaking around them as the ship groaned under the strain of whatever was happening. Behind them, the chamber collapsed in on itself, sending debris tumbling down the spiral tunnel. They barely made it outside before the ground erupted in a blinding flash of light. Alex and Ryan threw themselves to the ground, shielding their heads as chunks of rock and metal rained down around them. When the chaos finally subsided, they climbed to their feet, coughing and covered in dust. The alien ship was gone, buried once again beneath layers of earth and rubble. Only the faintest traces of its existence remained, a few shards of crystal glittering in the dirt, and the lingering scent of ozone in the air. Back at the colony, things were falling apart. The plasma storms had intensified overnight, battering the domes with relentless fury. Generators sputtered and failed, leaving entire sections of the habitat without power. Colonists huddled together in the communal areas, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. Daniel Hayes paced nervously in the command center, his jaw clenched tight as he reviewed damage reports. Supplies were running dangerously low, and morale was at an all-time low. People whispered about abandoning U7 altogether, fleeing back to Earth while they still could. But Daniel knew that wasn't an option, not yet. Not unless they wanted to admit defeat. When Alex and Ryan returned, dragging themselves through the airlock coated in dirt and sweat, Daniel wasted no time confronting them. His face was red with anger, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Where the hell have you two been?" he demanded, stepping forward. "Do you have any idea what's going on here? Storms are tearing us apart and you decide to go joyriding? In the middle of it, you weren't joyriding?" Alex snapped back, her own frustration boiling over. "You found something important." "Oh, really?" Daniel shot back, crossing his arms. "And what exactly did you find that's worth risking everyone's lives for?" Alex hesitated, glancing at Ryan. How could she explain what they had discovered? The alien ship, the warnings, the strange connection Pixel had to the technology, all of it sounded insane, even to her own ears. But she didn't have a choice. They needed to know. It's something out there, she began slowly. An alien ship. It crashed centuries ago, maybe longer. We think it belongs to the civilization that used to live on this planet. And it's trying to tell us something. Daniel stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You're serious?" "Serious as I've ever been," Alex replied. She pulled the small spherical device from her pocket and held it out. This came from the ship. "It interacts with Pixel somehow. He's like a key to understanding it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Daniel sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "Even if I believe you, which I'm not saying I do, what good does it do us? We're barely surviving as it is. What makes you think we can handle alien tech?" "Because we don't have a choice," Alex said firmly. "If we don't figure out how to use it, we're not going to make it through the next storm. You know that as well as I do." Daniel opened his mouth to argue, but before he could say anything, the lights flickered overhead. Another generator had failed, plunging part of the habitat into darkness. The colonists nearby murmured anxiously, their voices tinged with panic. "Fine," Daniel said finally, his tone defeated. "Do whatever you need to do. But if this blows up in our faces, it's on you." Alex nodded, relief washing over her. She turned to Ryan, who gave her a small, encouraging smile. They had bought themselves some time, but not much. The storms were getting worse, and the colony was hanging by a thread. If they were going to save everyone, they would have to work fast. As they headed back to Alex's quarters to examine the device more closely, Pixel trotted ahead, his tail held high. Despite everything, he seemed completely unfazed by the chaos around him. Watching him, Alex couldn't help but smile faintly. "You're quite the little troublemaker, aren't you?" she murmured, scooping him up and scratching behind his ears. "But I guess we owe you one." Pixel purred contentedly, curling into her arms as if to say, "Of course you do." For now, they had survived. But the real challenge was just beginning. Part 4, the holographic map hovered above the console, its glowing lines and symbols shifting slightly as if alive. Alex stared at it, her mind trying to process what she was seeing. The highlighted point on the map wasn't far from there, Current location, just a short walk deeper into the alien ship. But something about the way the projection moved made her uneasy, as though it was watching them as much as they were studying it. "Okay," Ryan said finally, breaking the silence. "So we follow this thing, right? It's leading us somewhere." Alex nodded, though her grip on Pixel tightened unconsciously. The cat seemed perfectly calm, his tail flicking lazily as he sat perched on the console. His presence felt both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because he was familiar, and unsettling because of the strange connection he clearly had with this place. "Let's move," Alex said, setting Pixel down gently. She grabbed her scanner and slung her pack over her shoulder. Da-da-da-da-da-da. "Stay sharp. We don't know what's waiting for us." Ryan nodded, adjusting the straps on his own pack. Together, they stepped away from the console and began following the directions indicated by the map. The corridor stretched ahead of them, dimly lit by the same crystalline structures that lined the walls. Each step echoed softly in the vast emptiness, the sound bouncing off the smooth surfaces like whispers from another time as they walked. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Every so often, she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see something or someone following them. But there was nothing except the faint hum of energy coursing through the ship. It was quiet, too quiet, and the absence of noise made her nerves tingle. Pixel trotted ahead of them, his movements fluid and confident despite the unfamiliar surroundings. He paused occasionally, sniffing at the glowing crystals or brushing against the walls with his fur. Each time he did, the lights pulsed brighter, almost as if responding to him. Alex exchanged a glance with Ryan, who looked equally baffled. "This is nuts," Ryan muttered under his breath. "What is he doing?" "I don't know," Alex admitted, "but I think he's helping us somehow." They continued onward, guided by the pulsing lights and the occasional adjustment from the holographic map. After several minutes, the corridor opened up into a larger chamber. Unlike the rest of the ship, this room was dominated by a massive central structure, a towering pillar made of the same crystalline material as the walls. Embedded within it were dozens of glowing nodes, each one radiating a soft, rhythmic light. At the base of the pillar stood a pedestal, similar to the console they had seen earlier, but more intricate. Symbols carved into its surface shimmered faintly, casting patterns across the floor. Pixel approached it without hesitation, hopping onto the pedestal and settling down as if claiming it as his own. "What now?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex hesitated, then stepped forward cautiously. She placed her hand on the pedestal, expecting resistance or maybe even danger, but instead, the entire structure came to life. The nodes in the pillar began to glow brighter, their light spreading outward in waves. A low hum filled the chamber, growing louder until it resonated deep in their chests. Suddenly, a beam of light shot upward from the pedestal, forming a three-dimensional image suspended in midair. It depicted a planet, not a seven, but some other world entirely. Surface was lush and green, dotted with sprawling cities and towering spires. Strange creatures moved through the streets, their forms humanoid yet distinctly alien. Above them, ships soared gracefully through the sky, powered by streams of glowing energy. "It's beautiful," Alex murmured, her voice filled with awe. She couldn't look away. The image felt real, almost tangible, as if she could reach out and touch it. But then the scene shifted. The vibrant colors faded, replaced by darkness and destruction. Fires raged across the landscape, consuming everything in their path. The once thriving cities crumbled into ruins, and the skies turned black with ash. The ships that had flown so elegantly moments before now plummeted to the ground in fiery explosions. "What happened to them?" Ryan whispered, his tone heavy with dread. Before Alex could respond, the image changed again. This time, it showed the alien ship itself, or rather a fleet of such ships. They floated in space, surrounded by swirling clouds of plasma. One by one, the vessels began to collapse inward, consumed by the very energy they had harnessed. Final frame froze on a single ship, the one they were standing in, now crashing onto the barren, surface of EOS-7. The projection disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, plunging the chamber back into relative darkness. For a long moment, neither Alex nor Ryan spoke. The weight of what they had just witnessed hung heavily in the air. They destroyed themselves. Alex said finally, her voice trembling, "Whatever race built this place, they pushed too far, played with forces they didn't fully understand." Ryan nodded slowly, his face pale. "And now we're here, poking around in their ruins." "Do you think that's why Pixel reacts to this stuff? 'Cause he's connected to them somehow?" "I don't know," Alex admitted, "but it makes sense. He didn't just wander into our colony randomly. There's something special about him." Pixel meowed softly, jumping down from the pedestal and rubbing against Alex's leg. She bent down to pick him up, holding him close as if to shield him from the enormity of what they had discovered. Despite everything, she couldn't help but feel a surge of protectiveness toward the little cat. Whatever secrets he carried, they were tied to this place and to the fate of the civilization that had come before. "We need to keep going," Alex said after a moment, forcing herself to focus. "There's more to find here. Maybe answers, maybe something we can use to help the colony." Ryan hesitated, glancing back at the pedestal. "You really think we should? What if we trigger something else? Something worse?" "We don't have a choice," Alex replied firmly. "If those aliens wipe themselves out using this technology, then we need to understand it. Otherwise, we might end up making the same mistakes." Reluctantly, Ryan agreed. They gathered their gear and continued exploring the chamber, searching for clues that might lead them further into the ship. Pixel remained glued to Alex's side, his eyes darting curiously around the room. Every so often, he would pause and nudge certain areas of the wall, causing hidden panels to slide open or revealing compartments filled with strange artifacts. One such compartment contained a small device, no bigger than Alex's palm. It was shaped like a sphere, its surface covered in tiny, interlocking plates that shimmered faintly. When she picked it up, the plates shifted subtly, rearranging themselves to fit snugly in her hand. The moment her fingers closed around it, a warmth spread through her body, accompanied by a faint buzzing sensation. "What is that?" Ryan asked, peering over her shoulder. "No idea," Alex said, turning the object over in her hands. "But I think it's important." Pixel chirped softly, pawing at the sphere, as if urging her to hold on to it. Alex slipped it into her pocket, resolving to examine it more closely later. For now, they needed to press on. The storm outside was still raging, and every second they spent inside the ship brought them closer to running out of time. As they ventured deeper into the alien vessel, its atmosphere grew heavier, charged with an almost palpable sense of history. The walls seemed to pulse with memories, echoes of a long-lost civilization struggling to survive. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched not by living beings, but by remnants of the past lingering in the shadows. Eventually, they reached another doorway, this one sealed shut with a thick layer of crystalline material. Pixel bounded forward, pressing his paws against the barrier. To their astonishment, the material began to dissolve, melting away like ice under sunlight. Beyond it lay a narrow passageway leading downward, spiraling into darkness. "Well," Ryan said dryly, "this just keeps getting better." Alex took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. "Let's go." With Pixel leading the way, they descended into the depths of the ship, leaving behind the eerie beauty of the upper chambers for something far more mysterious, unpotentially dangerous. Whatever awaited them below, Alex knew one thing for certain: humanity's survival depended on uncovering the truth buried within these ancient ruins, and she wasn't about to give up, not when so much was at stake. Part 3. The clock on Alex's tablet read 11:47 p.m. when she slipped out of her quarters, careful not to make a sound. The habitat was quiet, most colonists asleep in their bunks. Pixel followed her silently, his padded paws making no noise. Against the cold metal floor, she had already packed her gear tools, rations, a portable scanner, and now carried it all in a compact backpack slung over one shoulder. Her environmental suit hung neatly folded under her arm, ready to be donned once they reached the airlock. Ryan was waiting for her near the maintenance bay, where Rover 1 was stored. He looked tense, but determined, his own pack bulging with supplies. When he saw Alex approach, he gave her a quick nod and gestured for her to hurry. They didn't have much time before the storms picked up again. "Everything's set," Alex whispered as she joined him. "As ready as we'll ever be," Ryan replied, his voice low. "I double-checked the rover's systems earlier. Hold up fine, even if the plasma gets bad." Alex nodded, glancing around to make sure no one else was nearby. The last thing they needed was to be spotted sneaking out. When satisfied they were alone, she helped Ryan push open the heavy door to the bay. Inside, Rover 1 sat waiting, a rugged, six-wheeled vehicle designed for traversing EO7's harsh terrain. Its reinforced frame and electromagnetic shielding made it ideal for surviving the planet's violent storms. They worked quickly, loading their gear into the rover's storage compartment and strapping themselves in. As Alex secured her seatbelt, she noticed Pixel dart past her legs and leap onto the dashboard, curling up between two control panels. She sighed, reaching out to grab him. "No way, buddy," she said firmly. "You're staying here." Pixel let out an indignant meow, squirming in her grasp, but Alex wasn't budging. Taking him along would only add unnecessary risk. Reluctantly, she carried him back to the corner of the bay and placed him gently on a pile of spare parts. "Stay safe. Okay, I'll be back soon." Pixel blinked up at her, his green eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, Alex felt a pang of guilt. Leaving him behind always felt wrong, like abandoning a piece of herself. This mission was too dangerous. Closing the bay door behind her, Alex climbed back into the rover and gave Ryan a thumbs up. He started the engine, and the vehicle roared to life, its powerful thrusters kicking up dust as they prepared to leave. With one final glance at the habitat, Alex braced herself as Ryan guided the rover toward the airlock. The transition from the safety of the domes to the unforgiving expanse outside was jarring. As the airlock cycled open, the howling wind rushed in, carrying with it a sharp tense of ozone. The sky above was a chaotic swirl of colors, streaked with jagged bolts of plasma lightning that lit up the horizon. Even through the thick glass of the rover's windshield, Alex could feel the oppressive weight of the storm pressing down on them. "Let's move," Ryan said, gripping the wheel tightly. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before this thing kicks into high gear." Alex activated the scanner mounted on the dashboard, programming it to track the mysterious signal. A small red dot blinked steadily on the display, marking their destination several kilometers away. The route ahead was anything but smooth, sharp rocks jutted out from the ground, and deep fissures crisscrossed the landscape like scars as they drove. The storm grew louder, the constant crackle of electricity filling the air. Plasma bolts struck the ground around them, forcing Ryan to swerve repeatedly to avoid getting hit. Each impact sent tremors rippling through the earth, making the rover bounce violently over uneven terrain. Alex gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white as she tried to steady herself. "You doing okay over there?" Ryan shouted over the noise. "Yeah, just peachy," Alex yelled back, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Despite her attempt at humor, she couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Every second they spent out here brought them closer to Dangerand, farther from the safety of the colony. After what felt like hours, it was probably only 30 minutes, they finally reached the area marked on the map. The signal was stronger. Now, pulsing steadily in the background like a heartbeat, Alex pointed ahead, spotting a dark shape silhouetted against the storm-lit sky. "There!" she shouted. "That has to be it." Ryan slowed the rover to a stop, parking it near the base of a rocky ridge. Through the haze of swirling particles, they could barely make out the outline of something massive, half buried in the ground. It looked almost like a ship, its surface covered in layers of dirt and debris. Whatever it was, it hadn't been touched by human hands in centuries, if ever. "This is insane," Ryan muttered, staring at the structure in awe. "How did anyone miss this during the initial surveys?" "Maybe because it's buried under 50 feet of rock and plasma," Alex replied dryly. "Or maybe because it's alien." Ryan shot her a look, but before he could respond, another bolt of plasma struck nearby, shaking the ground beneath them. "We need to hurry," he said urgently. "This storm isn't letting up." Grabbing their gear, Alex and Ryan stepped out of the rover, their boots crunching against the brittle soil. The wind tore at their suits, threatening to knock them off balance. Alex adjusted her hood, keeping her head low as she approached the structure. Up close, it was even more imposing than it had appeared from a distance. The hull was sleek and metallic, though heavily corroded in places. Strange symbols etched into the surface glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the ground. "What do you think those are?" Ryan asked, pointing to the markings. "No idea," Alex admitted, "but they're definitely not human." They circled the ship cautiously, searching for an entrance. After several minutes, Alex spotted a narrow opening, partially hidden by a collapsed section of the hull. She motioned for Ryan to follow her, and together they squeezed through the gap. Finding themselves inside a dimly lit corridor, the interior was unlike anything they'd ever seen. A pale blue light throughout the space. The air smelled strange, not unpleasant, but foreign, tinged with a metallic temps. Alex ran her hand along the wall, marveling at the intricate patterns carved into the material. It was beautiful, in a haunting sort of way. "Look at this," Ryan said, his voice hushed. He was examining a console embedded in the wall, its surface covered in more of the glowing symbols. "Do you think we can activate it?" "No," Alex replied, frowning. "If we mess with the wrong thing, we could trigger some kind of security system or worse." Before they could debate further, a soft hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The crystalline walls began to pulse rhythmically, as if responding to their presence. Alex froze, her heart pounding in her chest. "Did we do that?" Ryan asked, his wide eyes reflecting the shifting light. I don't think so," Alex stammered. Then, without warning, Pixel darted past her legs, startling both of them. "What the how did he get here?" Ryan exclaimed. Staring at the cat in disbelief, Alex groaned, dropping to her knees to scoop Pixel up. "How does he always manage to sneak aboard?" Pixel purred innocently, completely unfazed by the chaos around him. As Alex held him close, she noticed something awe. The crystals seemed to glow brighter whenever he moved. It was subtle, but undeniable. "Ryan?" she said slowly, her voice trembling. "I think Pixel might be part of this somehow." Ryan stared at her, then at the cat, then back at her. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Alex didn't answer. Instead, she turned her attention to the console, placing Pixel gently on the surface. To her astonishment, the symbols began to rearrange themselves, forming new patterns that pulsed in sync with the crystals. A low vibration resonated through the chamber, and a holographic projection flickered to life above the console. It showed a map of the surrounding area, with a single point highlighted in bright red, the signal's origin. "Well," Ryan said after a long pause, his voice tinged with awe, "guess we found our lead." Alex nodded, her mind racing. And if they wanted answers, they would have to keep following the trail deeper into the unknown. Part 2. The next morning, Alex woke up to the soft hum of the habitat's environmental systems. She stretched lazily in her bunk, feeling the lingering soreness in her muscles from yesterday's repairs. Pixel was curled up at the foot of her bed, his tail twitching as he slept. For a moment, she just lay there watching him breathe. It was strange how something so small could bring so much comfort in such a harsh place. But her peaceful thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her unit buzzing on the desk nearby. Groaning, she rolled over and grabbed it, squinting at the screen. The message was from Daniel Hayes, the colony leader. He wanted to see her immediately in the command center. Alex frowned. Daniel rarely called meetings unless something serious was going on. She quickly got dressed and headed out, leaving Pixel behind with a bowl of food and water. The corridors of the habitat were quiet this early in the day, most colonists still asleep or busy with their morning routines. As she walked, Alex noticed the usual signs of wear and tear: cracks in the walls, flickering lights, patches of mold growing where moisture had seeped through. Resources were running low, and maintenance crews were stretched thin trying to keep everything functioning. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before something gave way completely. When Alex arrived at the command center, she found Daniel pacing back and forth, his brow furrowed in frustration. A few others were gathered around the main console, including Ryan Meyer, who gave her a quick nod when he saw her enter. On the large monitor mounted on the wall, grainy footage from one of the external cameras played in a loop. It showed nothing but swirling plasma clouds and flashes of lightning. "What's going on?" Alex asked, stepping closer. Daniel turned to face her, his expression grim. "We've picked up an unusual signal coming from outside the safe zone. It's faint, intermittent, but definitely not natural." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You think it's alien?" "We don't know yet," Daniel admitted. "Could be interference from the storms, or maybe some kind of malfunctioning equipment left behind by the survey teams. But whatever it is, we need to figure it out before it causes problems for the colony." Ryan leaned forward, tapping a few commands into the console. "I ran a spectral analysis on the signal earlier. It doesn't match anything in our database. That's why I flagged it for review." Alex crossed her arms, thinking. Strange signals weren't unheard of on EO7. The planet's electromagnetic activity often played tricks on sensors. But something about this felt different. Maybe it was the timing. The storms were getting worse, and resources were dwindling. They couldn't afford to ignore anything that might help them survive. "So, what's the plan?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, glancing at the others in the room. "For now, we're keeping this under wraps. If word gets out, people will panic. In the meantime, I want you to," he pointed at Alex and Ryan, "to monitor the situation. If the signal becomes stronger or more consistent, let me know right away." Alex nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Keeping secrets in a place like this was risky. People talked, rumors spread, and trust was already fragile. She understood the logic behind Daniel's decision. Panic could be just as dangerous as any storm. After the meeting, Alex and Ryan lingered in the command center, discussing the signal further. Ryan pulled up additional data on the console, showing her graphs and waveforms that meant little too. Her butt seemed significant to him. "There's something off about this," Ryan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's almost like, I don't know, like it's trying to communicate." Alex chuckled dryly. "Communicate with us? Or with someone else?" "That's the thing," Ryan replied. "If it is communication, it's not using any protocol. We've seen before, and if it's not communication..." T trailed off, shaking his head. "Well, let's just say I hope it's not hostile." Lax sighed, leaning against the console. "Either way, we can't sit around waiting for answers. We should check it out." Ryan looked at her sharply. "Are you serious? You want to go? Out there? Into the storm? It's not like we have a choice," Alex shot back. "If this signal turns out to be important, and I mean really important, we'll regret not looking into it sooner." Ryan hesitated, clearly torn. "Even if we do find something, Daniel will never approve a mission like that, not with the storms getting worse." "Then we don't tell him," Alex said firmly. "Not until we know for sure what we're dealing with." Ryan stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're impossible, you know that?" Alex grinned. "That's why you love working with me." Later that evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, Alex sat in her quarters, staring at a map of the surrounding area displayed on her tablet. The signal's origin point was marked with a blinking red dot, located several kilometers beyond the edge of the safe zone. Getting there would be dangerous, not just because of the storms, but because the terrain itself was treacherous. Sharp rocks, deep crevices, it's an unstable ground made traveling outside the domes risky, even in good weather. Pixel jumped onto the table, knocking over a pen in the process. Alex reached out absently to pet him, her mind racing. Could they really pull this off? Sneaking out without permission was risky, especially if they got caught. But staying put felt worse somehow, like ignoring a warning sign when every instinct told you to pay attention. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Startled, she quickly closed the map and called out, "Who is it?" "It's Ryan," came the muffled reply. Alex opened the door to find Ryan standing there, holding a data pad and looking unusually serious. Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I thought about what you said earlier," he began, setting the data pad down on the table, "and I think you're right. We need to investigate this signal." Alex blinked, surprised. "Really? Just like that?" Ryan shrugged. Look, I'm not saying I'm comfortable with breaking protocol, but I trust your judgment. Besides, we both know Daniel won't authorize a trip like this unless we give him concrete evidence first. Alex smiled faintly. Glad to hear. So what's the plan? Ryan tapped the datapad, bringing up a detailed route map. We'll take Rover Wynet's the most storm-resistant vehicle we've got. If we leave tonight, we can avoid drawing too much attention. The storms are supposed to ease up slightly around midnight, giving us a narrow window to make the trip. And what happens if we run into trouble? Alex asked. Ryan hesitated, then met her gaze squarely. We improvise, like we always do. Spent the next hour going over every detail, double-checking supplies, and reviewing contingency plans. By the time they finished, Alex felt a mix of excitement and unease. This was reckless, no doubt about it, but it was also necessary. Whatever was out there, it deserved answers. As Ryan prepared to leave, Alex stopped him with a question. Do you think it's aliens? He paused, considering. Honestly, I don't know. Could be. Could be something else entirely. All I know is, if it is aliens, I hope they're friendly. Alex laughed softly, though the idea sent a shiver down her spine. Friendly or not, they were about to find out. After Ryan left, Alex turned to Pixel, who was watching her intently from his perch on the bed. What do you think, buddy? She asked, scratching behind his ears. Ready for an adventure? Pixel meowed in response, tilting his head as if to say, You're crazy. Yeah, well, Alex muttered, picking him up and hugging him close. Crazy keeps us alive around here. With that, she set Pixel back down, checked her gear one last time, and tried to get some rest. Tomorrow would be a big day one that could change everything. Part 1. The wind howled across the barren plains of EO7, carrying with it a fine mist of electrically charged particles that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The sky above was an endless swirl of deep purples and angry reds, punctuated by jagged streaks of plasma lightning. It was a world unlike any other place, where nature itself seemed to rage against the presence of humanity. Yet, despite the chaos, people had found a way to carve out a fragile existence here. They called it home. Alex Carter tightened the straps on her environmental suit as she stepped out of the airlock and onto the metal platform overlooking the colony. Below her stretched rows of domes made from reinforced polymer, each one glowing faintly under the artificial light strung. Between them, these domes housed everything: living quarters, laboratories, storage units, and even small patches of hydroponic gardens. To Alex, they looked like bubbles, clinging desperately to life in a sea of hostility. She pulled her hood closer around her face, shielding herself from the biting cold that seeped through every crack in the atmosphere. Her breath fogged up the visor for a moment before the internal heating system kicked in, clearing her view. She glanced at the horizon, where the plasma storms were beginning to gather strength again. They always did this time of year, churning up the planet's volatile surface and making life even harder than usual. Plasma levels rising, came a voice over her comm unit. It was Ryan Meyer, her co-worker and occasional partner on these maintenance runs. You might want to hurry up out there. I'm moving as fast as I can, Alex replied, her tone light but tinged with irritation. She didn't need reminders about the dangers of being outside during a storm. She'd been doing this job long enough to know the risks and the importance of keeping the colony's power grid operational. Alex adjusted the heavy toolkit, slung over her shoulder, and began descending the ladder to the ground. The soil beneath her boots felt brittle, almost glass-like, crunching softly with each step. She walked toward the nearest generator tower, its tall silhouette looming against the swirling sky. Plasma storms were unpredictable, and if the generators failed, the entire colony would be plunged into darkness. Or worse, exposed to the toxic atmosphere outside the domes. As she worked, her mind drifted to Pixel, the scruffy little cat who had somehow become her constant companion over the past few months. He wasn't supposed to be here, no. Pets were allowed on EO7, but he had shown up one day. Scrawny and half-starved, wandering aimlessly near the edge of the habitat. Against all odds, he'd managed to survive the harsh conditions. And when Alex found him huddled under a pile of scrap metal, She couldn't bring herself to turn him away. Pixel had wormed his way into her heart quickly, his mischievous antics providing a rare source of amusement in an otherwise bleak existence. He followed her everywhere inside the domes, curling up on her bunk at night or perching atop control panels while she worked. But today, he wasn't with her. She had left him back in her quarters, knowing how dangerous it was to take him outside during a storm. Still, she missed his presence. There was something comforting about having another living creature nearby, especially one as resilient as Pixel. The hum of the generator grew louder as Alex approached, drowning out the distant rumble of thunder. She knelt beside the base of the tower, opening her toolkit and pulling out a diagnostic scanner. The device beeped steadily as she ran it along the exposed wiring, searching for signs of damage. So far, so good. The last thing they needed was another breakdown. But just as she was finishing up, sharp cracks split the air, followed by a blinding flash of light. Alex instinctively ducked, shielding her eyes as a bolt of plasma struck the ground not far. From where she stood, the impact sent a shockwave rippling through the earth, nearly knocking her off balance. For a moment, everything went silent, except for the ringing in her ears. When she finally looked up, her heart sank. A section of the power line connecting the generator to the main dome had snapped, leaving it dangling precariously in the wind. If she didn't fix it soon, the entire grid could fail. And with the storms intensifying, that wasn't an option. "Ryan," she said into her cum unit, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I've got a problem out here." "The line's down." There was a pause before Ryan responded. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Alex replied, already climbing back to her feet. "I'll try to patch it, but I'll need backup ready in case things go south." "Copy that," Ryan said. "Just don't do anything reckless, okay?" Alex smirked faintly as she disconnected the call. Reckless. That was practically her middle name these days. She grabbed a coil of replacement cable from her toolkit and secured it to her belt before heading toward the damaged line. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and every second counted as she worked. Alex couldn't help but think about how much had changed since she first arrived on EO7. Back then, she had been full of optimism, eager to prove herself as part of humanity's bold leap into the stars. But reality had a way of grinding those dreams down. Life on this planet was hard, brutally so, and it demanded sacrifices from everyone who dared to call it home. Yet, for all its challenges, there was a certain beauty to EO7. In moments like this, when the storms lit up the sky in dazzling displays of raw energy, it was easy to see why people kept coming back. It was a reminder that even in the harshest environments, life persisted. Whether it was humans clinging to survival or a stray cat finding warmth in unexpected places, resilience was everywhere. By the time Alex finished repairing the line, her hands were numb from the cold, and her muscles ached from holding her position against the unrelenting wind. She gave the connection one final check before signaling Ryan that the job was done. She packed up her tools and started the trek back to the airlock. She allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Another crisis averted. For now inside the safety of the habitat, Alex peeled off her suit and hung it up to dry. The warmth of the interior was a welcome relief after hours spent battling the elements. Made her way to her quarters, where Pixel greeted her with an impatient meow, rubbing against her legs as if to say, "Asterisk, where have you been?" "Asterisk, hey there, buddy," Alex said, scooping him up and scratching behind his ears. "Missed me, huh?" Pixel purred loudly, nuzzling into her hand. Despite the exhaustion weighing her down, Alex smiled. No matter how tough things got out here, moments like this made it all worth it. Even in the face of raging plasma storms, humans and their cats never quit.